Hi, everybody. Are you looking for some free science fiction and fantasy books to get you through this weekend? We've got them. Today we have Magic Schools, A Witch Who Rescues an Elephant, and a Time Travel Tour Company. But before we get to that, hi, everybody. My name is Maria KOROLOV, and I'm the editor here at MetaStellar. We're an online magazine. We publish science fiction, fantasy, and horror, and all our short stories are always free to readers. And we're serializing a novel right now by an award-winning author and artist, E. King. We are up to number 26 in the serialization. That's available in print and on YouTube because the author reads it herself. And we have a couple of anthologies out. So check those out. The links are in the description box below. So today I was helped out by editors Emma Foster, Lilibet Dominguez Torres, and Terrence Smith. And Emma is here with us today. Hi, Emma.
Hey,
All right, so I'm going to skip over the rest of it and let's get straight into the books. We're going to count down from the fifth best-selling science fiction and fantasy books on Amazon's free ebook list. They have a free ebook list that they kind of hide, but the link to it is in the description box below. Okay, so let's start with book number 5. There we go. Let me make that a little bit bigger for you guys. Ta-da! The Serpent Stairs by Dan Michaelson and D.K. Holmberg is the first of 7 books in the Essence Wielder, a coming-of-age Magic Academy fantasy series. It's like a progression fantasy. The other books are $5 to $6 each, but they're all in Kindle Unlimited. Kindle Unlimited's where you pay 12 bucks a month and you read all you want, kind of like a Netflix for books. The 7th book isn't out yet, but is scheduled for release this November, and you can pre-order it. And both authors have been on our free Friday list before, multiple times. And Lilibet Dominguez Torres has read this for us. She's read the beginning of this for us, but she's not here. So Emma will tell you what she thought of the book. So the way we do these is we only read the first few chapters of each book because we have to get through a lot of books in a very short time because the books do not stay free for long. So this is a first chapter's review. So Emma, what did Lilibet think of this book?
so she starts off with talking about the story a little bit. She says that it starts with Dax Nelson. He's a man who's raised on the border of the Empire and the Unclaimed Lands, and it's where powerful monsters prowl. So in the first few chapters, we get to see Dax's family, see how they survive and fighting the monsters. They try to make their way past the border, and they're selling different things to alchemists along the way. So almost everyone in Dax's family wields a fire essence, which means that they're warriors, all except for Dax's sister Megan. So after Megan's testing, she ended up claiming a wind essence, and she becomes a scholar at the academy. So that's something that doesn't sit well with Dax's father. And knowing this, Dax can't help feel anxious about his own testing because he is the only one left in the family who hasn't claimed his essence yet, and maybe meeting his father's expectations of becoming a warrior just like him is going to be a bit harder than he thought. So he's not really sure what he even wants for himself in the future at this point. He's basically just training his hardest. He's hoping for the best at this point. But it makes the beginning of the story pretty interesting and captivating according to a little bit. And she also says that it looks like the story has an interesting magic system and it's going to leave you wanting more, just like it did to her. So she said the writing feels right from the beginning, but she does think there's a few things missing, like proper description of characters, things that could help us visualize the world a bit better. But she says it's still a really entertaining story, and she thinks that she'll be sticking with this one. And she definitely recommends it to those out there looking for new, fast-moving fantasy story with magic, monsters, and probably a lot of mysteries as well.
I've read Holmberg's couple of other books and liked them.
Yeah,
Uh,
you mentioned he'd been on like Free Friday before.
yeah, I think I've even read like entire series that he's written. And so progression fantasy is kind of like Harry Potter, where you move up a level with each book and you're like gaining skills and abilities. Lit RPG is usually progression fantasy. And I do like them. They do kind of like suck you in and kind of get you hooked on seeing the main characters like move up in levels and abilities.
Yeah, there's always something about like RPGs with like the story element to it, especially like when you make a campaign or an RPG, you get to focus on the story more than actual gameplay. So it's like seeing it in literary form is even better.
Yeah. And of course I write books that are set in the virtual world. So I have that side of it also has a strong interest. Although I don't think this is necessarily set in a virtual world. I don't think. Anyway, yeah, I think it's like straight fantasy. All right, next book is a collection of short stories. Ninth Planet by Jason Palmer. This is not part of a series, but if you like the author's style, he's got a few other books up on Amazon, all of which are in Kindle Unlimited. This is his first time on our Free Friday list. So it's a pretty hefty volume of stories. There's only 9 stories in this book, so they're more like novellas, really. And I checked the page count, and this book has more pages in it than any of the other books on today's list, not counting the box sets, which of course have more pages in them. So this is hard science fiction. So I started reading the first short story, and it starts in the near future. Griffin and Linda are traveling cross country on a motorcycle, and they stop at a truck stop about 20 miles from the city that is their destination, far enough for the bike's self-driving system not to kick in. They go into a diner, they order a milkshake, and we find out that they're revolutionaries of some kind on their way to an important meeting. So this is a world that's very much like our own, except that everything has electronics in it, and advertisements are beamed straight into your brain. Like your clothes have tags on them that tell companies where you've been and how long you've been wearing them and all these other things. And Griffin is convinced that the government is using all this to spy on him and Linda. And he's probably right because they're terrorists. They are spreading some kind of virus or a plague that makes it so that people can't receive all the ads that companies are trying to beam into your brain. And the group that they're with also blows up the transmission towers and does other kinds of sabotage to get people basically their minds back. So a little bit of a like a too close to realistic dystopian future. Um, so so they're sitting in this diner, and the guy next to them seems to be really into the advertisements that he's watching. And when they both stand up and they go to the restroom, Griffin walks past him and injects him with a needle. The man notices it and tries to attack Griffin. So Linda sprays his face with a self-defense spray, the guy's face, and they both leave the diner, get back on the bike, and start driving. And so whatever they did to the guy in the diner will mean that the guy can't hear the ads anymore. And it seems that refusing to listen to the ads is something you're not supposed to do. Maybe it's illegal and it can mark you as a terrorist. And Griffin checks the news, and we learn that there have been reports of a mysterious virus, possibly genetically engineered bioterror, and it's known as the Dead Quiet Plague. And so I guess that's what Griffin and Linda are spreading. So good for them. And we also learn that the terrorist organization has AIs working for them, disrupting broadcasts, creating traffic jams, causing other kinds of havoc, and the government AIs try to shut them down. So this is definitely a very cool premise. It reads more like the beginning of a novel or a novella than a short story. And it kind of reminds me of the movie Brazil. I like it, and I might read the rest this weekend. Okay, next we have The Orb of Kandara by Morgan Rice. And we're going back to fantasy with this one. This is the second book in the Oliver Blue and the School for Seers, a young adult fantasy series by USA Today bestselling author. The other books are $5 each, and they're not in Kindle Unlimited, But the first book in the series, The Magic Factory, is free today and has over 2,500 star ratings. And the author has been on our list before. So if you're into young adult fantasy or Harry Potter kind of books, I think this book is for you. And Emma read this for us. Emma, what did you think of it?
Yeah, I definitely got the vibe of Harry Potter when I was reading this. So, like you were saying, this is the second book in the series, so there is a whole lot to unpack here. And the story begins with Oliver. He finds himself trapped in a cabinet. So it turns out, while he's trying to figure out where he is, he realizes that he's wearing this amulet that a professor gave him. And it turns out that the amulet allows him to travel through time, which I thought was really cool. But that's only as long as it's hot. Right now, it's like ice in his hand, so he's unable to use it. And he can't get back to the place called the School of Seers, which exists in some other point in time. Also, it mentions that in the first book, Oliver caused some chaos by appearing in 1944 at one point. So I definitely thought, oh, I should probably go back in the first book and figure out what that was all about. But Oliver soon understands why he ended up there. He remembers that he teleported with the amulet to the factory. It's owned by this old man named Armando. And he's a friend whose death he's supposed to prevent. So Oliver is there to stop that from happening, and he's there to alter the timeline. So he goes to find his friend. He comes across another old man, Lucas, and it looks like this guy wants to get rid of Armando. So he's probably the reason why Armando dies in the first place. So they both reach Armando's office. Oliver successfully thwarts the old man's plan to poison his friend, and this guy is then taken away. So the perspective then shifts really quick to Malcolm. He's another young student, but he is at a rival school. So he's not at the School of Seers. He's in this totally different place. He wants to make it his mission to destroy the school that Oliver goes to. So it's like the rivalry between the school runs pretty deep, apparently. And with his gifts, he might do just that because he is highly advanced, even for like a 12-year-old student. He's doing better than a lot of even the older students, so he feels like he has a shot of being able to do this. So back with Oliver, Armando gives him this compass that might have belonged to his parents. It's not to be confused with the couple who raised him. He was taken to the Seer School a little after that, but he wasn't really happy there. They mistreated him, like that type of thing. This is where it really felt like Harry Potter. So those aren't his real parents. It just turns out that he was adopted, and it's something that Oliver wants to confirm. He wants to know more about his real parents before he goes out to find them. So he heads back to his old house. He uses the compass to get there. And while there, he confronts his adoptive parents about how they mistreated him. Then he explains that he's leaving and that he's never coming back. So he decides to head to his old middle school because it looks like that's where the compass is leading him, and he needs to find his old science teacher. So right off the bat, Oliver's doing all these different things. He thwarts some guy's death. He goes and confronts his adopted parents, and now he's going to meet the science teacher. So we get into the action really quickly with this one, and everything was really fast-paced, but it was easy to catch up with all the details from the first book, so I kind of had an idea what was happening anyway. I enjoyed getting to know Oliver as a character, and I thought Malcolm's arc promised to be really interesting. But like the writing is very simple. It feels definitely geared more towards like children's writing, that type of thing. So I don't think I'll stick with it personally, but if it's something that you really enjoy, you really like magic, school, and like Harry Potter, like we were talking about, I would definitely recommend checking this series out.
Let's start with the first book,
Yeah.
which is free. So there's no excuse.
Yeah.
Just grab them quickly while they're still free.
And the second book is still also free.
Yeah, so authors and publishers often make the first book in a series free, so people will buy the rest of the series. And this particular series has 4 books in it. I forgot to mention. Okay, so then it's on to a series that I read. The Thorne Witches, books 4 and 5 by T.M. Cromer. And so this is a box set of the 4th and 5th books of the 13-book series, The Thorne Witches, which is a romantic, cozy, magical mystery series. And let me make that bigger for you guys so you can see the cover. There you go. So the 13th book isn't out yet, but it is scheduled for release this coming November and is available for pre-order. And the author has been on our Free Friday list before. So I do love cozy mysteries, so I actually grabbed this book voluntarily myself first thing in the morning. Then I realized that I'd be starting in the middle of a series, so I went back and got the first book, Summer Magic. That book is not free today, but it is in Kindle Unlimited. So if you have a subscription to Kindle Unlimited, go ahead and read it. I recommend doing that. So it's a series of small town cozy mysteries with lots and lots of magic and romance. And the first book in the series, the one that I started reading, has over 9,000 star reviews. So I had very high hopes going into it. So the premise of the book is that there are 4 sisters, all witches. They're living in a house together in a small town, and their names are Summer, Winter, Spring, and Autumn. And our protagonist in this first book is Summer. She's a veterinarian, and in addition to doing normal vet stuff, also rescues animals. So for example, she has a rescued elephant and a rescued orangutan and a whole bunch of other animals. Oh, and every time she sneezes, mice appear somewhere in her vicinity, like out of nowhere, like new mice pop up. So very funny, lots of shenanigans. When the book opens, her elephant has escaped, has gone over to the house next door, which has a swimming pool in it, and is swimming in the pool. And the owner of that house next door is the town sheriff. He's got a big problem with Summer's menagerie and thinks it's a public health hazard, especially when her animals keep escaping and causing havoc. Also, he and Summer dated briefly in high school, and it did not end well because he was a jerk. But each of them is still in love with the other one for unknown reasons, maybe magic. And Summer's carrying a big grudge against him, and he's just a jerk and acts like a jerk. So I did not like that part of it. I did like the funny shenanigans. So at one point, they want to distract people from the fact that they're going to levitate the elephant out of the swimming pool. So they let a herd of fainting goats loose in the town center as a distraction. So funny stuff. But we haven't had a murder. I'm several chapters into this book, and it's all relationship drama. The sheriff has brothers and a cousin, and she's got her sisters, and everyone's in love with everybody else, and nobody's telling anybody. And there's all these dramatic and sexual tensions. And I'm sure that there's people who are going to love it. I mean, obviously, thousands of people are going to love it. But I'm here for the murder, and I still haven't seen a dead body. And all the sexual tension is making me cranky. So I do not think I'm going to stick with this book or this series, but I recommend it highly to anyone who loves romantic comedies, misunderstandings, faded lovers, and magical shenanigans. All right, so before we go on to book number 1 in today's Free Friday list, this is the top selling free science fiction and fantasy book on Amazon. I want to thank our Patreon supporters. MetaStellar is run completely by volunteers. We've got volunteer editors, copy editors, video editors, all kinds of different editors, and we all post everything for free. Emma, by the way, is our new reprints editor. So thanks, Emma. So we fund all this with our Patreon supporters, and all the money goes to pay for original fiction. None of it goes to overhead. All the overhead's donated and all the labor's donated. So if you support our Patreon, it will help new and emerging authors publish their original fiction in our publication and our anthologies. So very much appreciated. And I also want to give a shout out to Emma's editorial services company, because she's a professional editor, and to the fact that I have books up on Amazon, which you can buy and read. All right, now to book number 1 on today's free sci-fi and fantasy bestseller list. This is Bridgers, a box set of books 1 through 3 by Stan Smith. And the other books are $4 each and are all in Kindle Unlimited. The author's been on our Free Friday list before, and Terrence Smith reviewed this for us, but he's not here with us today. So Emma, what did Terrence think of this book?
So he had a lot of thoughts about this book. So he says that the first book in the box set, it starts well enough with a decent action scene. It's when the protagonist Infinity, along with a guide and a tourist, are fending off Neanderthal hunters. So he says here that the prose didn't really grip him at the beginning of this. He said it was more fine, it wasn't great. He said the premise does sound interesting though, because there is a tourism company called Safe Trek, and it provides guided trips to alternate versions of Earth that have branched off from our timeline at different points in history. So he says this could be a really great setup. The question is like, why is this the thing? How does it work? Some of these questions he doesn't really get the answer to. And at this point, the Safe Trek, it's mostly just tourists who wonders like what sort of is the history with that. And he also says that the protagonist Infinity is kind of like on the side where she doesn't really have any defining characteristics. She's tough, strong, that type of thing, but it's like the emotionally distant, strong woman, that you sometimes see. And he would have liked to see like a bit more complexity with her, but he said that the most interesting part of the story right now is that at one point, 3 young students go on this Safe Trek journey because they want to see a version of Earth that branched off millions of years ago because they're writing a dissertation. So he says he really wants to know more about that aspect of it. He says that this could be a very fascinating story, but as things stand, he's not going to continue with it.
All right. Okay, so that was it for our today's Free Friday list. Thanks, Emma, for joining me today. Thanks, Terrence and Lilivette, for helping out with the reviews. And if you'd like to see a little bit more from MetaStellar, I'm going to put a couple of links up here to the Gods and Monsters interview with the author and a link to the first installment where you can see the author read from her book. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next Friday. Bye-bye.
Hi.